Now again, as I keep saying, it's good to step back and take breaks. I'm getting ready to do the trimming phase, and one of the basic things that I'm going to apply paint to is just the steps before I trim, just because getting the yellow paint on the engine is a pretty good idea. You'll notice compared to when I do the drawing itself, I actually kind of move the card around quite a bit more. Sometimes I even turn it a little bit. Basically, mainly just getting the yellow in for the steps. And kind of trim using kind of an orange color to trim the red. Some cases vary, but a lot of times, in a lot of cases, it's good to trim with a slightly lighter color than you're going to paint. Sometimes you want to trim. It's not always that case. It's about, maybe, I don't know, sometimes it's about half and half. But some cases, when you're, what I would describe is that when you're trimming like reds and light blues, those kinds of colors, trimming with a lighter color is definitely usually a pretty good idea, because what it is if you trim with a too dark a red, the trimming itself will stand out as it is a certain amount. And if you trim with a really darker red color, it stands out that much more. Yet, like, if you're painting something like Brunswick green or something, and you trim it with black, that's actually not the worst thing in the world. You don't want to trim it with like a medium lighter green, because in a lot of those cases, you really see this lighter green next to it versus a crisp straight line. And the other thing about it is black ballpoint pens definitely tend to be much crisper than like if you had a green ballpoint pen. So, kind of varies from case to case. And you notice, one of the things you'll notice at times, especially when I start to paint and even trim, sometimes I don't quite give quite as much discussion, because when I'm trimming or painting, which is something that I just recommend to you. Like here I see the yellow. I really actually could have stood to put 2 coats of yellow. I actually recommend you always put 2 coats at least. A lot of colors put 3. But like, see, like as you could kind of hear, I was not really giving advice one way or the other about that, because when you do start to paint, especially, your concentration level goes up extremely high. And a big part of that is because through the years, especially, what I've found is that it's when you're painting, here's gray for the window, the latches on the window, and for the, but when you're painting, like where this has white letters, for instance, and stuff, it's all of a sudden that as you're painting, now we'll start trimming the black. It's that you have to really be focused quite a bit, because you don't really get an erasure when you're working with a pen, even a ballpoint pen, let alone the brush tip pen. There's a certain amount that the ballpoint pen, if it gets a little too close, you can kind of fudge it back out, but not too much. But the brush tip pen, once it starts to get too close in there, you really can start losing a lot of the, like the CN logo or the CN dot Canada. And that's why a lot of times when I start painting, what it is, there's not too much technique here. It's just that, like, I'm not really explaining how to draw the logo or anything. It's just that in the end, you want to get good at getting these lines nice and tight and close, so that when you paint around with the finished brush tip, it gives it a nice crisp look. One thing that's helpful, like here, I'll just use it on the end because we'll cut it off, but ever so often, just sort of start your pen up again. That's why I keep scraps around and stuff. I have lots of scraps where I test colors. Starting pens over like that is basically the equivalent of sharpening your pencil, in the sense of kind of gives your pen a fresh point. And I'll do the trucks in a second part of the trimming video.